So, do you think the cell could, or do you know that the cell can, do they have like certain people that they kind of pay attention to, or do they? Do you know how they go around like deciding who they're gonna, come in contact with, or even if they don't actually say who they are, but unless in your situation, but
as far as I know, I've come in contact with about 25 people once in the same building that were all part of the group, as far as I could tell. At least they were acting as if they were all part of the group. Most of the time, the contacts are with 2 or 3 people at a time. Always men. Never met a woman with them. They very seldom are alone. I think in 20 some years of regular contacts, I think I've only seen 1 or 2 people be alone at any meeting that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember if there were more times, but more than 1, less than 4 in the last 20 years.
So when was your first contact with them? What was it like? How did that be?
I suspect they've been there all along. I just didn't recognize it as such.
Mm.
But I know that I began to recognize it in the 80s. Exactly when in the 80s? 1986 or 87, somewhere in that area. Time when I was going through the process of losing, if you can call it that, losing the project because I wouldn't go along with what was being asked of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically when I remember them as a structured organization. That up until that time, everything seemed to be just things that happened. But when you look back on it, the things that I've seen happen since the 80s were not the beginning of the process that led me here.
Right.
So therefore, the other occasions where people were kind of helpful in directing had to be part of this same process. And if that is the case, then that goes back to the time I went to Regal, at least, that I remember. And that would be when I was somewhere around 5 years old. Now, if I can now believe my mother, and when she says that the circumstances of my birth were that she was in the kitchen doing the laundry. She heard crying in the bedroom, and when there I was, somebody brought me there.
Yeah.
And that somebody had to be somebody on my side or somebody against me. I don't know for certain.
Right. To put you in that circumstance, right? Situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that from what I know, you can't get one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever side was there at the beginning, and I suspect it was probably the bad side
Mm-hmm.
that manufactured me this time around. That it wouldn't have taken long before the good side would get involved. At the beginning, it's tough to say who's good and who's bad.
Yeah.
Because the whole principle of the bad side is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
If you look at the map, I think I showed you downstairs, the European continent has two faces. One is the face which is Portugal.
Right.
And it's got a head made out of Spain, and kind of the hair is the Pyrenees. But it's followed immediately by France. And the image of France is hippopotamus type animal,
Right.
which, knowing the French side of the family and what was going on, they would tend to be more hypocritical than the Irish side, who tend to be more in your face.
Interesting, yeah.
And of course, the Irish came from France. Their origin is basically that root.
Right.
They were a group of priests leaving France, established themselves in Ireland. They, in turn, established Scotland, and the area in between Ireland and Scotland was enclosed by a third group, and that's Wales, leaving the space in the middle for what has become known as the English. Wales, of course, is the end part of the word Jerusalem.
Right. Real. Salem. Alem.
Alem comes from Elam. Elam was the capital of Media before Susa became the capital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, as soon as Susa becomes the capital, you know they have a gold, and that's USA.
Right. Okay. Now, would you say that the maps?
Eh?
Sorry?
I said it's a complex, complicated kind of thing, but I suspect that both are there all along.
Yeah. Interesting, though. Very. I think the whole idea of a group like that is well, it's intriguing, but the contact, especially since you're on pretty much, I would say, regular contact, right? As far as they basically inform you about things that are going on around, right?
Without getting into the criminal side, they don't discuss those things that will lead to a criminal charge on somebody. They don't discuss the detail. Because it's something like a policeman sharing information about a criminal case with neighbors or friends or whatever. It would be against their policy that you're not even supposed to discuss these things with your own wife.
Right.
So they will often say we can't talk about something, but they are quite willing to warn me if something is happening that I should know about without giving me the details.
Yeah. Be out of your house around this time or something like that, right? Yeah. Not bad, right?
Yeah. And I cannot say, even in the 20 years that have just elapsed, I cannot say once where they seemed deceitful. It's something that I've always kind of worried about. Is this a good cop, bad cop type situation? Are they both on the same side, but make it appear as if they're not? They never acted in any sense that would give me evidence that was happening.
Now, when you meet them, do you sense like some type of hierarchy? Like, is there a guy that usually speaks and the other guys are just sitting there, or they seem equal when they walk in, or is there?
Well, there is a broad range of ages.
Okay.
Some people are retired, and other people are still at work. From what I can gather, they have a regular employment and superiors at work that wouldn't be happy to know what they're doing.
So you're saying that basically them meeting with you is not really part of their job per se, but they're just kind of like sneaking off to meet you like that?
Let's just describe it this way.
Okay.
They work in an environment which they disagree with. But they have no critical mass that would allow them to change it. And therefore, if it were known that they are in fact gathering evidence for often, I guess, the purpose of putting their own bosses on trial, it would not go over too well.
Right. Okay.
And some of them have lived through that process for a number of years to the point where they're now retired, while others are still in that transition phase. And their view is that a critical mass needs to be created, and that the focus of that for them is me. How I do it and what I do is not their direction. It's because of who they believe I am that I am looked upon as having that responsibility. The exact thing that they expect from me or think I can do seems to be linked to who I was in the past, long time past. How far back they think I go, they haven't said.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a suggestion that I am Cro-Magnon, part of the original Cro-Magnons that would therefore go back to 40,000 BC. But that's not where I began, that I was, in fact, clan mother hermaphrodite type before then, that it was DNA that came from the original clan mothers that was basically used to make
first time they started
Cro-Magnon.
the first batches.
Yeah. So if that be the case, that then brings it down to about 115,000 BC, when the first clan mothers, and that's where the confusion begins, because Neanderthaler and Cro-Magnon are always discussed as if they were the same person or twins or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And how that division occurred and where they were when it occurred is hard to figure out. What I sense is that they were both at the same place, and the clan mother went towards Africa as a hermaphrodite, but somehow another group went more towards what we call Iraq, southern Iraq, around Basra, today's terms. And it was there in that general area that something happened to the Neanderthaler group. That has something to do with cryogenics, freezing. That doesn't mean that all Neanderthalers went through the same process at the same time any more than all the clan mothers living in Africa lived the same day every day.
Right.
But a certain substantial group of them went through this cryogenic process. And does that mean it was a cataclysmic event that occurred? And they all became frozen in time, that particular group? and then the others that remain thawed them out at a later stage, is hard to work out.
Right. Yeah.
The thing I suspect is that they were nurtured by another species during a period in time. And the historical evidence that I've been able to gather suggests that that animal resembles a walrus or a manatee or something that lives in the
Marshy.
edge of water, some wet
Marsh type. Yeah. A marshy type of animal.
marshy type of area,
Mm-hmm.
where clan mother types, since at the beginning there had to be one and it wouldn't be able to handle itself, was probably raised by a cat, a feline type of animal. Whether that feline was tiger or panther or whatever, I don't know. But if they were both at the same place when this happened, that cat would therefore have been from a cold region, and that would mean it would be a lynx.
The lynx.
Big feet, lost on snow.
Right, the pointy ears.
Pointy ears, the Ottawa, which seems to have a special place in this whole project. The Ottawa baseball team was called the Lynx. Not an accident that people choose these names,
right? Yeah.
Any more than the Mets are chosen because the word is stem cell, made from stem cell. Pro lights, pros.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So now, is Tiger Woods, is that his real name, Tiger Woods? Is it that's just
No.
that's just a professional
Yeah, that's the name that he got. I remember seeing what his name was, but I didn't pay that much attention at the time and don't remember, but I know it's not his real name.
Not even his last name, right?
And I suspect that he was not the child of the two people that claimed to be his parents.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he definitely has to be a that's his social engineering family.
Yeah. Hang on just a second.
All right.
Sorry about that, but I thought I just saw one of my goats run by.
Oh, no.
but it's the dog next door.
No.
At a distance through the rain.
Right.
Wasn't quite sure what it was. If it was a goat, then I would have had to run outside.
Right. They're always fun to catch, right?
Yeah.
Oh, before I forget.
Sorry,
now,
where were we?
Talking about tiger. And,
Oh, yeah, tiger.
but I wanted to ask, I remember you were saying it was, with the hair, has to be hanging freely past your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Now, what is?
What you're trying to do is get them in past the neck,
Right, piggy.
so that they're close to the spine.
But what about people that don't have straight hair? Because you say even if it's curly or if it's together, it kind of distorts, right? So my hair is curly. You remember what my hair looks like. So if it's curly, if it hangs down, it's going to be, curly.
Well, my hair is curly, but I don't twist it. It's just natural.
It's natural curl, right?
Yeah. So,
now, with the different hairs, like I was thinking maybe that the different hairs can pick up maybe a different wavelength, the frequency or something. Because even like, say, African American guy, hair is not going to just hang down past shoulders freely like that. It would have to be really, really, really long for it to, because it doesn't weigh anything. The hair is so light, it just stands straight up.
yeah.
Whereas, coarser hair will hang, the weight of the hair pulls it down. So, so what about in those situations?
I have no idea because I'm not them.
So I'm thinking it's just different, maybe a different frequency, because to get it to hang down past the shoulders, I think it would be a little. It'd have to be, I guess, comb it out and then hope for the best.
And the thing is not to do anything artificial.
Right.
To the hair. It's the artificial knotting or curling or anything that would disturb the natural flow of things. I don't think natural curls really have much impact. And different type of hair has a different purpose.
Right. That's what I was wondering.
Hair in your nose knows more about things that are floating around in the environment than it does about communications.
Right.
Same thing with hair in your ears. Have a different connotation. Beards seem to have less importance than hair in the back. Probably because the whole structure of the body is between the spine and the beard.
Yeah, I could see it. Okay. Yeah, that's something else.
Some people say that they have a gut feeling, so maybe if your beard hangs down to your belly button.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always try to cut it down a little bit at the front. I don't want to look like an Ayatollah.
Ayatollah.
Yeah.
What was the other thing I was thinking? Oh, I remember last time we spoke, you and the fellow were doing an experiment.
Yeah.
I remember it was like some things got in the way and you weren't able to complete it at the time.
Well, we have had 4, I think maybe 5 now attempts at doing what needs to be done, and what needed to be done is 4 separate sessions. The first one went fine. The second one, some people didn't show up on time. The third one, they couldn't gather enough people. The fourth one may have been okay, and just recently they couldn't get enough people. It's becoming a problem since the snow arrived, because their tracks, of course, are visible. You know? Especially when I'm around, if that makes a difference. I've purposely looked for that to make sure that they leave the same kind of imprint as I do walking in the snow. Yes, they do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you when you're near them, your eyes are peeled, huh?
Hey?
When you're talking about the people in the experiment, are they like the cell that's in the experiment, or it's just other?
Well, at the beginning, how it began was a group of us together determining how this would come about, and it was decided that when we were doing these sessions, we would form the equivalent of a triangle. There would be 3 points. I would be 1 point. One group would be the electronic gang, and the other point would be the sensory people. From what I could determine, the critical aspect of this was that the sensory people had to have a number of cats in their vicinity, and I had to have a number of cats in my vicinity where the technology gang, it didn't matter to them.
Yeah.
And at one stage of the game, we started bringing more cats into the house because it really got cold this month. And, some of the cats were not eating properly and needed to be boosted. Others looked pregnant. So at the last attempt, there was a definite shortage of cats. My suggestion was that, hey, why do I need to go outside the house? I got cats in the house now, you know. If there are 6 or 7 cats in my house, isn't that sufficient? They seem to want more a structured thing outside of the house for this particular set of experiments, that they'd all be the same. The last time I went out, I was able to attract 3 or 4 cats, and they didn't seem to have any luck with, I think there probably were about 10 cats in the house, and I got 3 or 4 of the ones outside, and they weren't able to attract any, or at least what they considered to be enough, which is 3 or 4. So we had to call off that session. I can't see, they wanted all this finished by Christmas. It didn't happen. 2 sessions happened that I'm sure they're satisfied with, but the other 2, I can't see it happening anymore until the spring, because the circumstances of how cats live and
Right, the weather change.
They don't follow in the same way as they do in the summertime. For a cat, they kind of put their foot out and they, hey, it's cold or
Yeah. I'm staying right here.
I'm not going there.
Right. Have you been able to look at any of their sensory equipment that they have? Like,
No, I haven't been privy to any of that stuff. Although I have, at one time we were not doing this experiment. We were trying to define if there was any movement underground. A number of people here had felt a kind of a rumbling thing.
right. Yeah.
They did have some equipment, but I don't know what it was. I never got to that stage for me of being close to the equipment. Just saw they were carrying bags and stuff.
Wow. So they're still kind of like, I guess, vague in their presence, right? Like they let you know, but then they don't like show you everything. Type of.
That's right. There's always an amount of question left hanging.
Wow.
And I can accept the fact that if you're in danger of being exposed,
Mm-hmm.
have to have a certain amount of private information. Remember the discussions we had at the beginning when I moved to this farm. I was then going to be around people who knew me for more than a day or two at a time. It was a discussion about how I'd handle that. And I said, I am not going to make it a habit of disguising what I'm doing or lying about what I'm doing. It just makes no sense that I would become the focus of something that would obviously cause other people to say, well, he's not being truthful in what he's in fact doing. So
right.
I said, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. They said, that's fine, as long as it doesn't put us at risk. And I said, I understand that. But if somebody says, what are you doing tonight? I'm not going to say I'm sucking my thumb in a closet when I'm going to be participating in some kind of activity.
Right. Yeah.
Because it would only be a matter of time before somebody would say, well, it's not true. He's not in the closet. So,
right.
so they said, if they ask who we are, just tell them that we're the cell. And when they ask you who is the cell, if they continue the conversation, just say we're cellular memory. Period. So my point of view is that's what I do, is I tell them what is acceptable to them. I don't go to the level of describing them in detail.
Right.
except that there is a range of age and there's no women. Those two things are obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I could see how maybe if, for instance, you did see some of their equipment and then you speak on that, that maybe if it is a department that they work for, I don't know what to call it, but maybe that could link them right back to, oh, well, they only have that type of equipment, so it could expose them in a way,
One thing I do know, and I've discussed it with them, is that they have access to all communications. There is no level of communications that I know of that they cannot receive. One of the levels of communications is, I guess, what the Prime Minister or President would call secure. They have access to that stuff because I've been basically told that the Prime Minister's office and Bell Canada, through the Chief of Staff, were discussing my project and how I was being used. And the project that I was promoting would never happen because the entire activity was intended to acquire land that Bell Canada could not get on their own, but that I could in fact assemble, and then they would steal it from me.
Wow.
So all of those conversations had to be held secure type communications between Bell Canada and the Prime Minister's office. And they have copies of those conversations. The Chief of Staff was a guy by the name of Bernard Roy in English, Roy in French.
Troy.
Link to the word Troy.
Yeah.
And the reason for it, I suspect, is its location close enough to the Ottawa River on the Quebec side of the river. I suspect that there is some kind of movement that happens in and around waterways, whether whether they are submarine type iPods or what have you, mini subs or what.
Mm-hmm.
There is some communication that happens underwater. And the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, have taken over a complex that was in Nepean by the Rideau River. And during the period dating back, 10 or 15 years ago, there was a moment in time when a trench was dug across the road from the direction of that building to the river. And we used to have to go by there to go to the airport. And I would say to people, it doesn't make any sense. Why would they be digging a trench from that building to the river? Doesn't make sense. You can't dump sewage into the river. It's downtown Ottawa. It's not quite downtown, but it's in the municipality of Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, what's the purpose of this? It was like they dug a trench and they laid down some big pipe, big enough, I guess, people could walk through. But because I suspect that the Rideau Canal has been involved as basically a cover for some kind of subway system that comes to Ottawa from Kingston and crosses Lake Ontario and is the Oswego on the New York side would be the central collection of people coming from Manhattan who would be traveling under the Hudson River and up to what's the capital of New York?
Albany.
By Albany, in that general vicinity.
Yeah.
That to me makes a lot of sense. And Bell Canada, of course, Ma Bell is communications spy. Doesn't matter whether a division is called TELUS or AT&T or Bell South or whatever. It's all the same company.
Yeah, we had Bell Atlantic over here.
They would have some need to be communicating. And I think the building they took over in the PN was a building that used to be occupied by a company from California in the fiber optic cable business. And they had links with Bell Northern. So they probably just set up the building on behalf of the police and wired it up, and then it probably is some kind of communication, fiber optic communication cable that would go through this under-river system.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, they're starting to push that over here now, too. Fiber optic cables.
Well, there is a connection as well between Boston and Montreal that I know of. When I was building MICOT, doing all of the planning, became part of the engineers' knowledge that there was already a cable down between Boston and Montreal that could transmit 17 trillion bits per second.
Wow, that's it.
That basically is all of the information known to mankind, I think.
In a second.
The problem is, what do you do with it after you've transmitted it? Where does it come out of, and what's it going to? Because it has to have a device that can receive that stuff. And I have no doubt that, the Moho discontinuity and that gang of Neanderthalers, they have such devices.
Yeah.
Been around long enough.
Computers long enough.
Have to communicate underground in a geodesic pattern. So it would be normal that some fiber optic structure existed.
Yeah, you're right. Just logically, if it could transmit, like you're saying, if it could transmit that much information at once, per second or whatever, then what can process that per second? That's amazing. Oh, another thing before I forget, how was the? I remember you're also looking into the play from was it the 18th Dynasty, and you were seeing how it was playing out and.
Yeah. To me, no one who lived during the 18th dynasty was born through a normal process.
Right.
Everyone involved, and I guess Hatchett's put 100 years before Nefertiti and Akhenaten were all part of this same process. And the lab is called the harem. And the harem was run by a priest called Ay, A-Y, and the queen, Tai, T-Y. And involved in that as well were their parents, who, from what I can gather, were bureaucrats. They certainly manufactured royalties. Everyone, Nefertiti's 6 daughters, Queen Tai's own children, which Akhenaten is supposed to have been one, and Becky-Naten at a later date. All of them, from beginning to end, I suspect, were all basically lab-made, and the key word is harem. And the reason the key word is harem is because it comes from the word hare, H-A-R-E, big bunny, big rabbit. Antarctica, of course, is like a big rabbit if you look at the thing I did on the site.
Yeah. No rabbit.
And it suggests that those 4 letters are very important in tracing things, a hare.
Right.
And if one were in your vicinity today and one were looking for the hare, that might be logical for someone to say Harlem.
And I think Bill Clinton actually he bought a place a couple of years ago in Harlem.
Yeah, I think in New York, that would be the place to look for the origin of things. First of all, it's got links to black people.
Yeah.
Secondly, many whites won't go there.
Yeah.
And therefore, that provides it with a certain amount of security. But since the goal from the beginning is to make a perfect slave, which they call mulatto, which is a combination between black and white, the need for black people in America, therefore, becomes a lot clearer. Black people didn't come to America because somebody needed cotton.
Right.
Cotton was going on in India, and they didn't need another place for raising cotton. What black people were brought to America for was to mix the races.
Yep.
Knowing full well that if you put a master who's white and slaves that are black, there's going to end up being intercourse.
Yeah.
Whether it's the master or his children,
his son or something.
along the way, it's going to happen. And at one stage of the game, when you want it to become really the thing, then you liberate the slaves, and then there's a normal progression between individual families. But in a place like New York, it requires special attention because that's the center of finance.
Yeah.
So you need to manufacture a place where you're going to be making black people for the purpose of integrating with the white community of financial people. Harlem fit the bill. Of course, they all got into contact with each other because of the roles they played. Financial people had money, and the blacks needed employment, and maids and butlers and chauffeurs. All of that would bring them in contact. So that whole process of Egypt only clarified for me what is going on today. And going back to Egypt, you look at it and you say, the task they set out to do, which was to create a more perfect slave, was not completed in their time. And therefore, it's an unfinished symphony. And this is the place, the farm, Ottawa, this region is the place that is in fact designated as the place to finish that project. As far as I am concerned, it involves Tiger Woods naming his first child Sam, although she was a girl called Sam. It involves Barack and Michelle Obama, who went to Copenhagen. Copenhagen is New Age chicken coop,
right?
Backwards, and it was call upon all the leaders of the world to come and meet the new Messiah. Now, the media would lead you to believe that the Messiah is Barack.
Right.
I suggest that the Messiah is one of the two girls that they were pawning off as the Messiah, instead of the girl of Tiger Woods called Sam. Sam, by the way, is just the last three letters of a holiday we just had, Christmas.
Right.
Christ Sam, Christ Mass, Christ Sam. But I think that dispute between the political arm and the professional sporting arm over whether one or the other has access to the new Messiah is a moot point that in all likelihood the Messiah or at least the Antichrist they have in mind would have to be male. I suspect I know the lineage would be linked to Mormons.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So it's still in the process of developing, but I think I know who the lineage is, and in the same way as at the penultimate time in the 18th dynasty, two boys came forward out of that environment. One was called Glen and has hair in it, Hare, and the other is Tutankhamun.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So two boys, this time from the lab, would mean it would come out of the Mormon community, specifically Latter-day Saints, who manufacture children to order for the world through their connections to the Mormons. And I'm working in trying to overstand rather than just understand.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding is easy. Overstanding has a quality to it that entails responsibility to the future, not just to the knowledge of the present. So, although I think I have knowledge of what it is, I observe, analyze, and conclude, and I'm not finished in observing and analyzing yet.
Okay.
But there is obviously a reason why this site is important, and that those people, whether it be the daughter of Tiger Woods or the two daughters of Obama, or what I prefer to think the two boys of someone connected to the Mormons, they must come here. That there is no doubt about it. In order to finish this symphony, they must have been here. And we'll see what happens. Now, Ottawa has already had the visit of Michelle Obama and Tiger, and not Tiger, Obama and Michelle. And I suspect it was to be knighted by Michelle Jean, the Governor General of Canada, who's a black lady from Haiti.
Right.
I always have trouble with thinking of black people as black the same way as I have trouble thinking of white people as white. We're not white, we're pink. and there are very, very few black people that I've seen, at least. Maybe they're hiding someplace, but
yeah, actual black color. Yeah.
Yeah, black is black, you know.
Yeah, they're more brown, I'd say.
Yeah.
Shades of brown.
Yeah.
Oh. So I see. So they had their candidates go up, and you need your candidates to go up. It's kind of like a...
Yeah.
Because
the one thing that whole episode of the 18th dynasty confirmed is the people behind it are on one side seers and bureaucrats. I don't know if those two things can be described as one and the same, because the seers may not have jobs in the bureaucracy, I guess is the only difference. But a bureaucracy has the ability to gather the information and know things that other people don't know. Revenue Canada, as the IRS does in the U.S., probably has more information than anyone else, excluding the Mormons. So that's one group. The other group is at the end of the 18th dynasty, the power was transmitted to the military. So it's obvious that when an AWACS plane flies over the farm, as it did this summer, it's not an accident, and the military is in charge. The police are the pawns on the chessboard, whether they're Royal Canadian Mounted Police or FBI or state police like the OPP or the provincial police here. These people are pawns, and they are disposable. The power resides on the back line of the chessboard. And the two corners, which are the rooks, are suggestive of bureaucracies. Next to them stands the military, and the military has special forces. One of the special forces may be the mafia. And then they have the bishops. And that tells you that although the major church here in the West may be the Vatican, that does not mean that the Protestants, Protestants, are not secretly still connected, just doing the different types of tasks. Because the Anglican Church appears to be the one responsible for this project of creating people in a laboratory and that kind of stuff. The one thing that there is no doubt is that the male in the monarchies is not the boss any more than the king on the chessboard is. He may be the target of activity, but he's not the one with the power. The one with the power has to be the queen, because of the moves the queen is allowed to make. The same moves as the ecclesiastics, plus ecclesiastics only move on an angle sideways. They can go front and back on either side, but on top of that, the queen can go straight forward, straight backwards, straight sideways. So the queen has a lot more possibilities.
Right.
And that would suggest, of course, that in a democratic institution, Michelle Obama has much more power than Barack. Barack is in the system, and he must follow the rules, whereas Michelle Obama has the power to move in all kinds of directions when nobody is looking, type of thing.
Exactly.
You have the same thing has become clear to me as I went through this exercise in trying to explain to the OPP Ontario Provincial Police, that they are the drivers of the getaway car. They may not be, in most cases, the actual criminal, but they make sure the criminal gets away.
Yeah.
And the criminal in this case is the insurance industry. In a broader sense, the financial industry.
Yeah.
Brings in much more people. And the police make sure they get away with things.
Yeah.
However, they shouldn't be too ready to point the finger at the police, say, in Mexico and say how bad these people are because they're corrupt. The only difference between the police in Mexico and Canadian police or American police is that the Canadians and the Americans are much more sophisticated than the Mexican police. The Mexican asks for money and you hand them $20.
Yeah.
The Canadian police hand you a ticket that a judge then finds you guilty of some offense so that the insurance company can raise the rates. Now, the question remains, how does the money get back to the officer who gave the ticket? Where does his commanding officer get their cut? How does a judge get his cut in the matter? And what's the process insurance companies have for distributing these kickbacks? Is it through the rank and file structure of the police by getting promotions? Or do they get taken away on holidays, depending on how much money they collect for the insurance companies?
Get to retire.
All I know is that in one case involving our truck here, which was bought after the farm vehicle was supposedly involved in a bumper-touching incident, which they called an accident.
Right.
We have had to pay $2,500 per year more in insurance on the truck than we would have otherwise, because Tom drives the truck as well as was the driver of the car. So I'm sure we're not the first people who've had to fork over $2,500 a year to the insurance companies. And I'd like to know how many billions of dollars are transferred in that way. And one of the things I tried to put across to the Ontario Provincial Police is, you guys may think you're in charge, but if you look at what you are living today, you were manipulated by the politicians to build your headquarters at a place called Orillia, Ontario. And as soon as the water comes running out of Lake Superior, guess who's in the line of sight of this water that's come rushing down? You guys. That should give you a sense of your value to the system and how you are simply pawns in this game and can be looked at as disposable. The system you work for has set you up to be the first ones killed. Now take that and put it in your pipe and smoke it. And if you don't believe me, do the investigation. Stop being tax collectors and start doing the investigation.
That's all they do, man.
Yeah.
And how long has it been since that accident?
Well, the accident,
quote unquote,
supposed accident happened on November the 8th. 2008. However, we did not get an inkling of the crime of extortion that was going to be attached to this event until July 2009, and didn't get the actual evidence on the specific vehicle, the one involved, until they announced what the new rates would be, and that wasn't until October. So we are basically 2.5 months into having the package, knowing what happened in the past, and then seeing how it was used and what was the purpose, took from November 2008 to November 2009. And guess what? They changed the law in October 2009 about police complaints commission. So when I received a letter from the police complaints commission, it said, this case will be dealt with a date prior to the change in the law. In other words, when they could get away with whatever they wanted to. And then they have the nerve to tell me that they don't investigate. They simply review the file, don't take oral statements from anybody.
Oh, wow.
They review the criminal's file. Have you ever heard anything so stupid?
Oh, man.
Only a politician would understand that that's considered to be an investigation.
Because the police are always right in their eyes.
You go to a bank robber and you say, have you got a file on this? I think you robbed the bank. I need to read your file.
No action will be taken until.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that day he came with the police report and they did all that crap, right?
Yeah. That part was November 8th, 2008. And that was the time at which I told them, I said, look at the car. Look at the vehicle. And I said, Tom admits to having touched bumpers. That's not an accident.
No way.
That's what they make bumpers for.
Yeah.
And I said, he admits to doing it twice. You guys are saying 4 times. Well, if it's 4 times and it leaves no mark,
right,
that's in my favor, not in yours.
Right. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And how do they know that? I mean, they'd have to be really sitting there just watching you, because what are the chances you're going to catch something? I think he set it up. Yeah, exactly.
I think he set it up on purpose.
Yeah, that's the only way. Because what are the odds that you just happen to be there, or someone just happens to catch a license plate? I mean, come on,
yeah.
That's too.
I think they set it up, and the only question I have is, was Tom in on it? I don't know for certain. Maybe he was.
Yeah, that is
that's always in my world.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Hey, it's like, especially
anybody who has the word Berg in their name,
mountain,
is a candidate, because the word Berg comes from the French word for shepherd. In French, the word is berger.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's spelled.
Allons-nous voir le Messie. Va berger, assemblons-nous. Hey, shepherds, let's get together and go and see the Messiah.
Oh, wow.
So if he wasn't in on it, they could have done it anyways. All they had to do was drive their vehicle so close to his bumper that he didn't have enough room to get out.
Yeah.
And he had to go back and forth a couple of times to just make the space to get out. You know?
Do you have a copy of the other person's license plate and the type of car?
No, they won't tell us anything. They won't tell us who it is. They won't tell us how they got the information.
They won't tell you. They have to give you the person's name, their insurance
company. They don't have to give you anything.
Yeah.
I've asked for it. And they say, go to access the information. Yeah, I've been through that route. About 5 years later, you get something that has nothing to do with what you asked.
Right. You get one line or something in a letter. Thanks for your patience. We got nothing for you.
You know, all blacked out, you know, everything, all the names and places and everything.
Oh, man. Yeah, if that's the case, if the cop really saw it or whoever they should saw it, he would have pulled him over right then and there while you were leaving scene.
Absolutely.
There's no, let me follow you to your house because I just happen to know where you live, and let me go do it. Like, what the hell is that?
And thinking it was me. They thought it was me driving because that's who they came to get.
You fit a description.
Yeah, I had long hair.
Oh, wow.
The vehicle had this address, and the driver had long hair, and therefore it must be me. That's what he told me.
Oh, shit.
So he drove in, and he was insulted that I didn't go and bow in front of his car, and I was chasing a goat at the time, and I told him, I said, I got more important things to do.
Well, he even came on your property without even getting permission.
Yeah,
right?
Just drove into the driveway.
Wow.
Anyway,
Do you remember his?
It's obviously totally political.
Yeah.
Now, the cell believes that it may, in the end, prove to be the most important thing that brings this whole case together. Every time I deal with the police, I don't limit the information I give them to what they want to talk about.
Right.
I've brought in the whole case of them driving away the getaway car in 1991 for the Prime Minister's gang of criminals. I've brought in what will happen in the future to them. So the actual event that we're in fact dealing with in current times is only the fulcrum for balancing the things that are of the past and that will lead to the future. And as far as the cell is concerned, this is their third strike. If they don't respond in a way that fits what their task is supposed to be, and continue to respond in a way that is, in fact, what they do, hypocrisy and crime, this is their last chance. From here on in, after we get the final decision from the appeal court, they will be on trial. As soon as the trials can begin, the management team of both the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Ontario Provincial Police will be on trial in a real court of appropriate jurisdiction, along with the people at Ma Bell and at Yahoo and at Netscape and all of those people. They will form the basic group of people which Native people have talked about from the beginning. A cleansing must take place of those people who cannot be brought to reason. And that cleansing basically means their DNA must not be allowed to move forward if this universe continues for a while longer. Creation allows this universe to go on. There is a group of people that must be cleansed. At first, I used to take that as come on, guys, no sense in getting nasty. But as I see them acting the way they do, hubris is their way of doing things. They act arrogantly from the bottom to the top because they believe nothing can happen to them.
Yeah.
They haven't heard the word creation yet. They still live in a world controlled by gods. So they're going to have to relearn under the most trying of circumstances for them. They will be asked all of the embarrassing questions. A court of appropriate jurisdiction.
That's on this.
Be according to what they've done. They still have a chance to go with strike two and say, I'm not going to go the last step on behalf of people who treat me like their pawn. Totally up to them. My job was to help expose that circumstance.
But this is what's going to take place on the ship, correct?
Yeah. Remember one thing. We are a town ship. We're not a city. We're not a town. We're not a village. Kempville Township.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I received an email from a woman in South Africa, formerly married to a man who can best be described as a choir master for all of South Africa. She sent me a picture of a city that rises, like almost like if you put a circle around a city with all of its buildings, and it lifted out of the ground and went higher. Well, the Canadian Shield is going to make that happen.
Right.
And we are the township.
Oh, wow.
A township, like any other ship, suggests that It is the master of its own destiny. A captain on a ship doesn't take orders from anyone. He's the one responsible.
Right. That's where those terms come from too, from being on ship master and all that.
Mast. Okay?
Right, the master.
Second mast. That means gather up your fruits and nuts, because there's going to be a feast.
Well.
Hogs will roam freely on this farm.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time. AOL Time Warner.
On her. Yeah.
Time. What's the word time? It, me.
It means, yep. 2 in 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
An I can be an O. O and E define a new beginning.
Beginning, yeah. Mm.
That leaves the T and the M, because Michigan is the Mitt. And Detroit yesterday was a hint. An airplane lands. Its instructions were to the guy inside to detonate his device in a place close enough that it would take out part of the airport itself. They are giving every hint possible that the destruction of that area is about to take place. Barack Obama makes sure that he's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Not to be anywhere close. In any event, that's where we are today. We'll see how it all plays out.
Plays out.
The unfinished symphony.
I'm in the orchestra section.
And I have to go feed some animals.
All right. Stay warm.
Not really. They are warm because they have a coat given to them by creation.
Yes.
Modified, mind you, by Creator along the way. But they don't seem to be worse for wear at the end of a winter, even though there's no heating in the barn.
No, I mean, a lot of those animals, before, they had heating, they were still around. So I know my father's horses actually prefer the winter.
Yeah.
You touch them, they're so warm, they're so hot, actually. And
what they wear is their coat for winter.
Right. Yeah. Nice. But that's the thing, like a lot of people from the horse people, for instance, on Long Island, or some horse people, they'll put those jackets on their horses, those man-made coats, and they put them on there for the winter, not realizing that the horse makes their own coat, and when you put that on there, the horse sweats, so now the horse is sweating in the winter, which is no good. It'll get sicker and whatnot. They don't realize that, but all right.
Okay, Danny.
All right, have a good one.
You too. Happy New Year.
Yes,
for
Happy New Year.
all of us, if we're to survive.
Yes, I'll take those words. Okay, good night.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.